The moment a powerful man realizes he's in love is usually the moment he sees her smiling at someone else. Adrian Whitmore had built an empire worth almost $3 billion before turning 38, but nothing in his life had ever prepared him for the strange pressure tightening in his chest as he stood near the rooftop entrance of the Blackstone Grand Hotel in Manhattan. The October wind carried the sound across the crowded charity party before he even saw her. Claire's laugh. Soft. Real. Uncontrolled. Not the polite little office laugh she gave clients during meetings. This one was different. Warm enough to stop him mid-step. Adrian slowly turned toward the edge of the rooftop terrace, Manhattan glowing behind her like a movie set, and there she was in a dark emerald dress, her blonde hair moving in the wind, while a tall man stood beside her with one arm loosely wrapped around her waist. Adrian's jaw tightened instantly. The man leaned closer to whisper something in her ear, and Claire laughed again, this time lowering her head shyly before lightly hitting his chest. Like she'd done it 100 times before. "There you are," his CFO muttered, approaching him with a glass of whiskey. "Board members are asking for you." Adrian barely heard him. His eyes were locked on Claire. On the way she looked at another man like he was the safest place in the world. Then Adrian noticed something worse. The camel-colored wool coat draped over the man's shoulders. His coat. The one Claire borrowed 3 weeks ago during that freezing rainstorm after working late with him in the office. She had claimed she accidentally took it home. Adrian never asked for it back. Now another man was wearing it. "You look jealous," the CFO joked casually. Adrian finally grabbed the whiskey glass without looking away from Claire. "No," he answered immediately. Cold. Sharp. Automatic. Impossible. But the word felt wrong the second it left his mouth. Because the pressure inside his chest only got heavier as the man leaned down again, his fingers brushing Claire's wrist naturally, comfortably, intimately. Adrian suddenly remembered every tiny thing about her that he had spent months pretending not to notice. The way she always organized his meeting folders by color when she knew he was stressed. The way she silently replaced the coffee in his office every afternoon before it went cold. The way she waited outside conference rooms whenever his migraines got bad because she somehow knew exactly when he needed silence. Claire Bennett had become part of his routine so gradually that Adrian never realized how much space she occupied in his life until another man appeared inside hers. "Who is that?" Adrian asked flatly. His CFO smirked slightly. "You really don't know? That's Ryan Carter. Apparently he's her boyfriend." Boyfriend. The word hit harder than it should have. Adrian took a slow sip of whiskey, forcing himself to stay composed while the skyline reflected against the glass walls around them. Across the rooftop, Claire looked happier than he had seen her in months. Ryan said something that made her smile again before gently fixing a strand of hair behind her ear. Adrian's fingers tightened around the whiskey glass. Too hard. A sharp crack echoed softly beneath his palm. The CFO looked down immediately. "Jesus, Adrian!" A thin line spread across the crystal glass where his grip had nearly shattered it. Adrian stared at it for half a second before setting it down carefully. Calmly. Like nothing had happened. But inside, something already had. Because for the first time in years, Adrian Whitmore walked away from his own charity gala early. And all night long, the only thing he could still hear was Claire laughing with another man. By Monday morning, Adrian Whitmore had convinced himself the feeling would disappear once he got back to work. That was how his life had always functioned. Emotions were distractions. Work was control. Numbers made sense. People usually did not. But the second he stepped onto the 42nd floor of Whitmore Financial, something felt wrong. The office was too quiet. His assistant desk was empty. No fresh coffee beside his office door. No printed meeting briefs stacked in perfect order. No soft voice reminding him his 9 o'clock investor call had moved to conference room 3 instead of 4. Adrian slowed his steps slightly. "Where is Claire?" he asked one of the analysts passing by. "She took 2 vacation days," the analyst answered carefully. Adrian frowned immediately. Claire never took days off. Not unless she absolutely had to. By 10:30, the entire morning had already fallen apart. His coffee order was wrong twice. Someone forgot to include a critical contract amendment before a board review. Another assistant interrupted a client meeting because she double-booked his schedule. Adrian sat through all of it in silence, but the tension in the room kept growing with every passing hour. Around noon, he opened his desk drawer looking for migraine medication and froze when he realized the bottle was empty. Claire always replaced it before he even noticed. Adrian leaned back slowly in his chair, staring at the skyline outside his office windows while an uncomfortable thought settled into his mind. He depended on her. More than he should. More than he ever allowed himself to admit. His office suddenly felt colder without her moving quietly through it. By the end of the day, Adrian found himself checking the security feed from the lobby without even realizing why. And then he saw her. Claire stepped through the revolving doors downstairs wearing a cream sweater and jeans, her hair tied loosely back after work hours. Ryan Carter followed beside her carrying 2 paper coffee cups while talking animatedly about something that made her smile again. That smile. Adrian felt the same sharp pressure return instantly. Ryan handed her one of the drinks before casually placing his hand against the small of her back as they crossed the lobby together. Familiar. Comfortable. Adrian's jaw tightened. "You are staring," his brother Lucas said from the doorway of the office. Adrian looked away immediately. "I am working." Lucas glanced down toward the lobby feed still open on the screen. "Right," he muttered. Silence filled the room for a second before Lucas smirked slightly. "That her boyfriend?" Adrian shut the monitor off instantly. "I do not care." "Sure you do not." Adrian stood up and adjusted his cufflinks with controlled movements. "Claire is an employee. Nothing more." But even he no longer believed the sentence completely. Because later that night, while reviewing reports alone in his penthouse office, Adrian caught himself remembering tiny things he had ignored for months. The way Claire tucked her hair behind her ear whenever she was nervous before presentations. The way she quietly removed pickles from his lunch because she once overheard him mention he hated them. The way she always left exactly one light on in the office when he stayed too late so the room never felt empty. Nobody had ever paid attention to him like that before. Not because of his money. Not because of his name. Just because she cared. Adrian loosened his tie slowly and closed his eyes for a moment, frustrated with himself. Then his phone vibrated. A calendar notification Claire had scheduled weeks ago appeared on the screen. Dinner with the Singapore investors. 7:30 tomorrow. Beneath the reminder was a short note she had added herself. "Do not skip dinner this time. You get headaches when you forget to eat." Adrian stared at the message far longer than he should have. And for the first time in years, the most powerful man in the room felt completely helpless because of a woman who probably belonged to someone else. 3 days later, Adrian told himself he was imagining things. That the uncomfortable feeling twisting inside him every time Ryan Carter appeared near Claire was temporary. Irrational. Meaningless. But rational men did not start memorizing another man's schedule just because he smiled at the same woman. And yet Adrian already knew Ryan picked Claire up from work every Wednesday at 6:15 sharp. He knew Ryan drove an old navy blue Jeep with a cracked rear taillight. He knew Claire smiled differently around him depending on the day. Softer when she was tired. Brighter when she forgot herself. Adrian hated that he noticed any of it. Late Thursday afternoon, the office floor had nearly emptied when Claire stepped into Adrian's office carrying a stack of investor reports against her chest. She wore the cream sweater again beneath a gray wool coat, and somehow even that small detail irritated him because he immediately remembered Ryan touching her waist while she wore it. "Singapore files are finalized," Claire said gently, placing the folders on his desk. "Your driver will be downstairs in 20 minutes. Adrian barely looked at the reports. "You missed 2 days." Claire blinked slightly, surprised by the comment. "I know. I am sorry." "You never miss work." Her fingers tightened lightly around the folder edge. "Family situation." Adrian nodded once, pretending the answer satisfied him even though it did not. Silence settled between them. Dangerous silence. The kind that made him too aware of her perfume, her voice, the soft sound of rain hitting the windows behind her. Then her phone lit up on top of the folder. Ryan. A smile appeared on Claire's face instantly before she tried to hide it. Too late. Adrian noticed. Of course he did. Everything okay? She asked carefully after realizing he was staring at her. Adrian looked away first. Fine. But his voice sounded colder than intended. Claire hesitated before answering the call quietly. Hey. Adrian kept signing documents while pretending not to listen. Tonight? Claire asked softly into the phone. A pause. Then she laughed under her breath again. That laugh. You are impossible, Ryan. Adrian's pen stopped moving. Okay. 7:30. Another pause. Thank you for helping me with this. Seriously. Adrian signed his name too hard across the bottom page. Claire finally ended the call and slipped her phone into her coat pocket. Sorry, she said. My boyfriend. The word landed like a punch directly into Adrian's composure. He leaned back slowly in his chair. You seem very committed. Claire looked confused by the tone. What? Nothing. Adrian stood and walked toward the window overlooking Manhattan. Rain painted silver streaks against the glass while yellow taxi lights blurred 40 stories below. Actually, Claire said after a moment, it is not exactly what it looks like. Adrian turned slightly. His chest tightened before he could stop it. But then Claire smiled faintly, almost nervous. My mother keeps trying to set me up with wealthy men from her country club circle because she thinks I need financial security. Adrian listened carefully without facing her fully. Ryan offered to help. That is all. Help. The word echoed in Adrian's mind immediately. Something loosened inside him before logic interrupted. Wait. Help how? Before he could ask another question, Claire's phone buzzed again. Ryan had texted her a selfie wearing Adrian's camel coat while holding takeout bags in front of her apartment building. Claire laughed quietly at the picture. He is ridiculous. Adrian saw the image clearly from across the room. And whatever fragile relief had appeared seconds earlier disappeared instantly. Because nobody looked at a fake boyfriend that way. Nobody smiled like that unless feelings were already real. Adrian buttoned his suit jacket slowly, forcing calm back into his voice. You should leave. Your boyfriend is waiting. Claire looked startled by the sudden distance in his tone. Right. Good night, Adrian. He nodded once without looking at her again. But after she left, Adrian remained standing beside the window long after the office lights dimmed around him, staring at the reflection of his own expression in the glass. Because for the first time in years, he was beginning to lose control of something far more dangerous than business. Himself. Adrian Whitmore had spent most of his life mastering control. Control over negotiations. Control over billion-dollar acquisitions. Control over every emotion that could make a powerful man weak. But over the next 2 weeks, Claire Bennett destroyed that control without even trying. It started with small things. Adrian suddenly began creating unnecessary reasons to keep her near him. Extra evening meetings. Last-minute schedule reviews. Financial reports that could have waited until morning somehow becoming urgent after 6 o'clock. Claire noticed it almost immediately. You already approved these projections yesterday, she said softly one evening while standing beside his desk. Adrian did not even look up from his laptop. I changed my mind. Claire narrowed her eyes slightly, clearly unconvinced, but she sat beside him anyway to review the files again. Adrian hated how relieved that made him feel. Because the truth was simple and humiliating. The moment she left the office every night, he started thinking about where she was going. Who she was with. Whether Ryan was making her laugh again. That thought alone ruined his concentration every single time. Friday night made everything worse. Whitmore Financial hosted a charity dinner for several New York investors at a private restaurant overlooking Central Park. Adrian arrived late after another meeting and immediately spotted Claire near the balcony windows in a black dress that made the entire room seem dimmer around her. Ryan stood beside her holding 2 champagne glasses while talking comfortably with several investors like he already belonged there. Adrian's jaw tightened the second he saw him. "Relax," Lucas muttered beside him. "You look like you want him removed from the building." Adrian ignored the comment completely. But throughout dinner, he could not stop watching them. Ryan pulling out Claire's chair before she sat down. Ryan leaning close to whisper jokes into her ear. Claire touching Ryan's arm naturally while laughing under her breath. Every tiny interaction scraped against Adrian's nerves until he finally lost patience entirely. Halfway through dessert, Ryan excused himself toward the restroom, leaving Claire alone at the table checking emails on her phone. Adrian crossed the restaurant before he could reconsider it. "You should not be working right now," he said quietly. Claire looked up in surprise. "You are literally answering emails during your own event." Adrian sat beside her anyway. Too close. Close enough to smell her perfume again. "Occupational hazard." Claire smiled faintly. "You say that every time." God, there it was again. That softness in her voice only reserved for him. Adrian opened his mouth to answer when Ryan suddenly returned and casually rested a hand against the back of Claire's chair. "Everything okay over here?" Adrian looked directly at the hand first. Then at Ryan. "Perfect," Adrian answered coldly. Ryan smiled politely, completely unaware of the storm building underneath Adrian's calm expression. "Claire was just telling me how hard she has been working lately. I keep trying to convince her to take a break. Claire's schedule is handled internally," Adrian replied immediately. Claire blinked at the sharpness in his tone. Ryan laughed awkwardly. "Right. Of course." But Adrian was already too irritated to stop himself now. "You seem very involved for someone outside the company." The air shifted instantly. Claire looked down at the table. Ryan straightened slightly. "I care about her," he answered simply. 4 words. That was all it took. Adrian suddenly realized he hated this man. Not because Ryan was arrogant. Not because he was rude. But because Ryan could openly stand beside Claire in ways Adrian never could. Ryan could touch her. Wait for her. Belong beside her without hiding it. Adrian stood abruptly from the table before the silence became unbearable. "Enjoy the rest of your evening." Claire looked up immediately. "Adrian." But he was already walking away toward the balcony doors, loosening his tie as cold Manhattan air hit his face outside. A few minutes later, Lucas stepped onto the balcony beside him holding 2 glasses of bourbon. "So," Lucas said carefully, handing him one, "you finally figured it out?" Adrian stared down at the glowing city streets nearly 40 stories below them. "Figured out what?" Lucas exhaled slowly. "You are in love with her." Adrian's grip tightened around the bourbon glass instantly. No. But this time, even he could hear the lie. The first snow of December arrived the same night Claire Bennett finally broke down. Adrian noticed something was wrong the moment she walked into the office that morning. She was quieter than usual. Distracted. Her smile never fully reached her eyes. Twice she forgot details she normally remembered instantly, and by late afternoon she had barely touched the coffee sitting beside her desk. Adrian tried to ignore the concern crawling beneath his skin, but every instinct he had was already focused on her. Around 7:30 that evening, most of the building had emptied because of the weather. Snow covered Manhattan in soft white layers while headlights glowed through the storm below. Adrian finished a conference call and stepped out of his office expecting to find Claire organizing tomorrow's schedule like always. Instead, her desk was empty. He frowned immediately. "Claire?" No answer. The floor was silent except for the faint hum of the heating system. Adrian loosened his tie slightly before walking farther down the hallway. Then he noticed a thin line of light beneath the archive room door near the back offices. He pushed it open carefully. Claire sat alone on the floor between shelves of old financial files, her knees pulled against her chest while tears quietly streamed down her face. Adrian stopped instantly. His chest tightened so hard it almost hurt. Claire. She looked up quickly, embarrassed. I am sorry. I did not want anyone to see me. Adrian shut the door behind him gently and crossed the room without hesitation. What happened? Claire wiped her face immediately. Nothing. Claire. His voice softened in a way it never did with anyone else. Talk to me. She looked down at her shaking hands. My mother invited that banker to another family dinner tonight. Adrian remembered the man immediately. 35. Wealthy. Politically connected. Everything Claire's family considered secure and respectable. And? Claire laughed weakly through tears. She told me Ryan is not successful enough. She said if I keep wasting time with the wrong people, I will regret it when I get older. Adrian's jaw tightened. That is not her decision. Claire shook her head slowly. You do not understand. My family thinks love is something practical. Something safe. They think feelings are irresponsible. Adrian stared at her quietly because the painful truth was that he understood perfectly. He had spent his entire life believing exactly the same thing. Claire inhaled shakily again, clearly trying to calm herself down, but another wave of panic hit her almost immediately. Adrian reacted before thinking. He crouched down in front of her and gently took her trembling hands into his. Hey, he said quietly. Look at me. Claire lifted her eyes slowly. Breathe. Her breathing remained uneven. Adrian moved closer instinctively, one hand carefully resting against the back of her head, while the other steadied her shaking fingers. Listen to me, he murmured. You are okay. Claire closed her eyes briefly as if his voice alone was enough to anchor her. Adrian could feel every wall inside himself collapsing at once. Because the moment she leaned toward him slightly, trusting him completely, nothing else in the world seemed important anymore. Not the company. Not the investors. Not the rules he had spent years building around himself. Adrian gently pulled her closer until her forehead rested against his shoulder. Claire's breathing slowly steadied against him while snow continued falling outside the windows behind them. Neither of them moved for several seconds. Then Claire whispered softly against his chest. Why do you always know how to calm me down? Adrian's heart nearly stopped. Because there was only one honest answer left. Because he paid attention to her constantly. Because he noticed every change in her voice, every hidden emotion in her eyes, every tiny detail no one else saw. Because he loved her. Adrian lowered his head slightly, his fingers still tangled carefully with hers. Claire, he said quietly, almost dangerously soft now. She looked up at him slowly. Their faces were suddenly too close. Close enough that Adrian could feel her breath against his skin. Close enough that one more second might destroy every boundary left between them. And for the first time in years, Adrian Whitmore almost forgot how to stop himself. Adrian barely slept after the night in the archive room. Every time he closed his eyes, he remembered Claire standing inches away from him beneath the dim office lights, her breathing finally calm against his chest while snow covered Manhattan outside the windows. He had almost crossed the line. Almost said everything he had spent months trying to bury. And somehow that terrified him more than any business risk ever had. By Monday morning, Adrian made a decision. Either he told Claire the truth, or he ended whatever dangerous thing was growing between them before it destroyed them both. The problem was that every time he tried to speak honestly around her, something stopped him. Fear. Pride. Timing. Maybe all three. Claire walked into his office just after 8 carrying his espresso and tablet schedule exactly the way she always did. Good morning, she said softly. Adrian looked up from his desk and immediately noticed she seemed lighter today. More relaxed? Like whatever sadness had broken her down days ago had faded. Morning, he answered quietly. Claire stepped closer to hand him the tablet, and their fingers brushed for half a second. The tension between them returned instantly. Neither of them pulled away fast enough. Claire looked down first. Adrian exhaled slowly. Claire. She looked back at him immediately. Yes? He almost said it right there. Stay after work tonight. I need to tell you something. I cannot pretend anymore. But before the words could leave his mouth, her phone buzzed. Ryan. Adrian recognized the name immediately flashing across the screen. Claire smiled apologetically before silencing the call. Sorry. The warmth in her expression disappeared the second she looked back at Adrian again, almost like she suddenly remembered where they were and who he was. That hurt more than it should have. You should answer it, Adrian said flatly. Claire hesitated. It can wait. Adrian leaned back in his chair slowly, rebuilding the emotional walls around himself piece by piece. No, he replied. You should not keep your boyfriend waiting. The words sounded bitter even to him. Claire's face fell slightly before she nodded and quietly left the office. Adrian closed his eyes the second the door shut. Coward. That was what he had become around her. A man capable of negotiating billion-dollar mergers but unable to tell one woman how much she mattered to him. By evening, a freezing rainstorm had covered most of Manhattan in silver reflections and fog. Adrian finished a late investor meeting and headed toward the underground parking garage beneath the building, his mind still replaying the look on Claire's face all day. Then he saw her. Claire stood near the black SUV waiting area beneath the garage lights, wearing Adrian's camel coat over her shoulders while Ryan stood directly in front of her. Adrian stopped walking immediately. Something about the moment felt too intimate already. Ryan smiled softly and reached up to brush rainwater from Claire's hair. Claire laughed quietly. Then Ryan leaned down and kissed her. Not dramatic. Not rushed. Just gentle enough to destroy whatever hope Adrian still had left. Adrian felt completely numb. Every sound in the garage seemed to disappear at once except the blood rushing in his ears. Claire closed her eyes briefly during the kiss before resting her forehead lightly against Ryan's shoulder. Adrian looked away instantly, like the sight physically hurt him. Because now there was no room left for denial. She loved someone else. The woman he had spent months quietly falling in love with already belonged to another man. Adrian turned before either of them could notice him standing there. By the time he reached his car, his composure had frozen completely back into place. Cold. Controlled. Untouchable. The dangerous vulnerability from the archive room vanished behind the billionaire mask again. The next morning, Claire arrived at work to find a sealed envelope sitting neatly in the center of her desk. Inside was a transfer order personally signed by Adrian Whitmore himself. London office. Executive Operations Director. Immediate relocation package included. Claire stared at the paper in complete silence while her chest slowly tightened. Because suddenly she understood the message hidden beneath the promotion. Adrian was pushing her out of his life before she could become something he could not control. For the next 4 days, Adrian Whitmore avoided Claire Bennett with ruthless precision. Meetings were reassigned through department heads. Calls were shortened. Every conversation between them became painfully professional. Cold. Controlled. Exactly the way things had been before he made the mistake of letting himself care. Claire accepted the London transfer quietly, which somehow hurt even more. Adrian kept waiting for her to argue. To ask why he was sending her away. But she never did. And that silence convinced him he had made the right decision. Because if leaving New York did not break her heart, then clearly he had imagined everything between them. Friday evening arrived with freezing rain covering the city in gray reflections. Adrian remained alone in his office long after sunset, staring at financial reports he had not actually read for nearly 20 minutes. His mind kept drifting back to the image from the parking garage. Claire in his coat. Ryan kissing her beneath the rain. The memory still felt like a knife sliding slowly beneath his ribs every time it replayed. A sudden knock interrupted the silence. You busy? Adrian looked up sharply. Ryan Carter stood in the doorway holding 2 paper coffee cups. Adrian's expression hardened immediately. You should not be up here. Ryan walked inside anyway and placed 1 cup on the desk. Claire said you stop eating when you are stressed. Adrian stared at the coffee without touching it. Interesting that my employee discusses my habits with you. Ryan exhaled slowly. You really have no idea, do you? Adrian finally looked at him directly. Excuse me? Ryan laughed softly under his breath, but there was no humor in it. You know what Claire's problem is? Adrian's patience snapped instantly. I am not interested in discussing Claire with her boyfriend. That is exactly the problem, Ryan replied quietly. Silence crashed between them. Adrian's jaw tightened. What are you talking about? Ryan leaned against the chair across from the desk. Claire asked me to pretend to be her boyfriend because her family would not stop trying to set her up with rich men. Adrian felt his heartbeat stop completely. Pretend. Yes, Ryan answered simply. Fake boyfriend. Fake dates. Fake family photos. The whole thing. Adrian stared at him without moving. His mind immediately replayed every moment from the last month. The rooftop party. The restaurant. The parking garage. Ryan sighed and rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. And before you asked, the kiss in the garage was not what you think either. Adrian's voice came out dangerously quiet. Then explain it. Her mother was watching from the lobby entrance upstairs. Ryan shrugged tiredly. Claire panicked because she thought the act was falling apart. Adrian felt physically sick. Because suddenly every decision he had made since that night became unbearable to remember. The transfer. The distance. The coldness in her eyes every time he pushed her away. Ryan looked at him carefully for a long second before speaking again. You know what the worst part is? Adrian said nothing. She loves you. Adrian froze completely. Ryan's expression softened slightly. Honestly, it is painful to watch. No, Adrian said immediately, but the denial sounded weak now. Desperate. Ryan shook his head. She talks about you constantly. Defends you constantly. Notices every tiny thing about you like you hung the moon. Adrian looked away sharply because hearing the truth out loud hurt more than jealousy ever had. She accepted the London transfer because she thought you finally realized she crossed the line. Ryan's voice lowered carefully. She would rather disappear than embarrass herself by loving someone who does not want her back. Adrian shut his eyes briefly. Every memory from the archive room crashed back into him all at once. Claire trembling in his arms. Claire asking why he always knew how to calm her down. Claire looking at him like he was the safest person in the world. And he had sent her away. God. Adrian stood so suddenly his chair rolled backward across the office floor. When is her flight? Ryan checked his watch immediately. Tomorrow morning. 9:15 from JFK. Adrian grabbed his coat instantly. Then his eyes landed on the camel-colored coat folded neatly across the office couch. The one Claire had quietly returned earlier that afternoon without a word. Adrian touched the sleeve slowly, remembering her wrapped inside it during the snowstorm while trusting him enough to fall apart in his arms. And in that moment, Adrian Whitmore realized the most terrifying truth of his entire life. Losing billions of dollars would never destroy him. But losing Claire Bennett absolutely would. New York looked gray and frozen the morning Adrian Whitmore realized he was about to lose the only person who had ever truly mattered to him. Traffic crawled through Manhattan beneath cold December rain, while Adrian sat in the back of his black town car gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. How long to JFK? He demanded sharply. 40 minutes minimum with traffic, the driver answered carefully. Adrian checked the time again. 8:23. Claire's flight boarded at 8:35. Every second felt like punishment now. Because all he could think about was every moment he wasted pushing her away instead of telling her the truth. The archive room. The snowstorm. The way she looked at him like he was safe. And he had answered that trust by sending her across an ocean. Adrian shut his eyes briefly. Take the tunnel, he ordered immediately. Sir, traffic reports say the tunnel is backed up for miles. Then drive anyway. Meanwhile, inside JFK Airport, Claire Bennett stood near Gate 14 holding her boarding pass with trembling fingers while travelers rushed around her beneath the bright terminal lights. She had not slept all night. Not after packing up her apartment. Not after leaving Whitmore Financial without even saying goodbye properly. The hardest part was not New York itself. It was Adrian. Because despite everything, despite the cold distance he rebuilt between them, some foolish part of her still kept hoping he would stop her. Her phone buzzed softly. "Ryan. You boarded yet?" he asked immediately. Claire forced a small smile. "Not yet." Ryan hesitated. "You still love him, do not you?" Claire closed her eyes briefly. "Ryan." "Claire." His voice softened. "You deserve someone who fights for you." Tears burned behind her eyes instantly. "He does not feel the same way." Ryan looked like he wanted to argue, but before he could answer, movement near the terminal entrance caught Claire's attention. People suddenly turned toward the escalators, whispering quietly as a tall man in a dark overcoat moved quickly through the crowded airport with reins still clinging to his hair and shoulders. Adrian. Claire's breath stopped completely. Because Adrian Whitmore never ran. Not for anyone. Yet there he was crossing the terminal like nothing else in the world mattered except reaching her in time. Adrian finally saw her near the boarding gate and immediately slowed, breathing harder than usual from rushing through the airport. For a moment neither of them spoke. The entire world seemed to disappear around them. Claire stared at him in complete shock. "What are you doing here?" Adrian looked at her like he had spent days barely surviving without her. "Stopping you?" Her heart nearly broke hearing the honesty in his voice. "Adrian." He stepped closer carefully. "Ryan told me everything." Claire froze instantly. Adrian shook his head once, frustrated with himself. "I thought you loved him." "I tried to," Claire whispered painfully. "It would have been easier." Adrian's chest tightened so hard he could barely breathe. "Claire, look at me." She slowly lifted her eyes to his. "I knew I was in love with you the moment hearing you laugh with him hurt me." Tears filled her eyes immediately. Adrian moved even closer now, his voice quieter, rougher, more vulnerable than she had ever heard it before. "I spent months pretending you were just my employee because I was terrified of what you meant to me." Claire looked down shakily. "Then why did you send me away?" Adrian exhaled painfully. "Because seeing you with someone else destroyed me." The boarding announcement echoed through the terminal overhead, but neither of them moved. Adrian gently reached into his coat pocket and pulled out the camel-colored coat she had returned to him. "You gave this back," he said softly. "Do you know what I realized after you left it in my office?" Claire shook her head slowly through tears. Adrian stepped close enough to carefully drape the coat over her shoulders himself. "Nothing in my life has ever felt right without you in it." Claire finally broke completely, tears slipping down her cheeks as she looked at the man standing in front of her. Not the billionaire. Not the powerful CEO feared by half of Wall Street. Just Adrian. A man terrified of losing her. "I love you too," she whispered. Adrian closed his eyes briefly like the words physically hit him. Then he rested his forehead gently against hers right there in the middle of the crowded airport, while Manhattan rain continued falling outside the giant terminal windows. And for the first time in his entire life, Adrian Whitmore stopped trying to control his heart. 6 months later, Manhattan glittered beneath warm summer lights while cameras flashed nonstop inside the Grand Meridian Ballroom overlooking Central Park. Whitmore Foundation's annual charity gala had become one of the most exclusive events in New York, filled with investors, celebrities, journalists, and politicians dressed in black tie elegance beneath crystal chandeliers. But tonight, nobody was talking about the donations or the billion-dollar fundraising numbers. They were talking about Adrian Whitmore. More specifically, they were talking about the woman standing beside him. Claire Bennett moved gracefully through the ballroom in a midnight blue gown while speaking with several foundation directors, calm and confident in a way she never used to be. Because everything had changed after the airport. Adrian had not only cancelled her London transfer immediately, he had offered her a leadership role overseeing the foundation's national education programs. And for the first time in her life, Claire no longer felt like someone trying to survive inside Adrian's world. She belonged there beside him now. Across the ballroom, Adrian stood finishing an interview with a business network reporter while his eyes unconsciously tracked Claire through the crowd every few seconds anyway. Lucas noticed immediately and smirked into his champagne glass. "You realize everyone can tell you are obsessed with her, right?" Adrian adjusted his cufflinks calmly. "I do not know what you are talking about." Lucas laughed. 6 months ago you nearly sent her to another continent because another man touched her hand. Adrian glanced toward Claire again just in time to see one of the older investors trying to flirt with her near the auction tables. Adrian immediately started walking in her direction without even realizing it. Lucas nearly choked laughing behind him. Claire looked up the second Adrian reached her side. Her entire expression softened instantly. Adrian handed her a fresh glass of champagne before calmly resting one hand against the small of her back. A simple gesture. Natural. Possessive enough that the investor excused himself almost immediately. Claire looked up at Adrian knowingly. "Did you just rescue me?" Adrian remained completely serious. "Absolutely." Claire laughed quietly under her breath, and even after 6 months, that sound still completely destroyed his ability to think clearly. A few minutes later, the foundation director approached the stage microphone to begin the closing ceremony. "Before tonight ends," she announced warmly, "we would like to recognize the woman responsible for expanding the Whitmore Foundation Education Initiative into 12 new states this year. Claire Bennett." Applause filled the ballroom instantly as Claire froze in surprise. Adrian looked genuinely proud beside her. "Adrian," Claire whispered nervously, "you did not tell me about this." "You deserve it," he answered simply. Claire stepped onto the stage beneath the lights while cameras flashed around her, but halfway through the applause, one of the reporters suddenly called out jokingly from the crowd. "Come on, Mr. Whitmore. The entire country wants to know already. Is she your girlfriend or not?" Laughter spread across the ballroom. Claire's cheeks turned pink immediately. 6 months ago, Adrian probably would have ignored the question completely. 6 months ago, he still would have hidden behind control and distance and fear. But now Adrian looked directly toward Claire standing beneath the lights, and his entire expression softened in a way that stunned half the room into silence. Then he calmly walked onto the stage beside her. "No," Adrian answered quietly into the microphone. The ballroom fell completely silent. Claire blinked in confusion. Adrian turned toward her fully before reaching into the inside pocket of his suit jacket. "She is not my girlfriend." Claire's breath caught as Adrian pulled out a small velvet ring box. Audible gasps filled the room instantly. Adrian looked at her like nothing else existed. "She is the woman who taught me that love is not weakness." Claire's eyes immediately filled with tears. Adrian opened the ring box carefully. "Claire Bennett, before you, I only knew how to work. I only knew how to control everything around me." His voice softened deeply now. "Then you walked into my office carrying coffee and fixing every broken part of my life without even realizing it." Claire laughed through tears while covering her mouth. Adrian smiled faintly before continuing. "I spent months being jealous because I was terrified someone else would become the center of your world before I found the courage to tell you that you already became the center of mine." The entire ballroom had gone silent now except for cameras clicking rapidly in the background. Adrian slowly lowered himself onto one knee right there beneath the crystal lights. "So no," he said softly while looking up at her. "You are not my girlfriend." Claire was already crying openly now. Adrian's eyes never left hers. "You are my future wife." Claire nodded before he even finished the sentence. The ballroom erupted into applause while Adrian stood and pulled her into his arms, relief and happiness finally replacing every month of fear and misunderstanding between them. A few minutes later, while photographers surrounded them near the ballroom entrance, Claire quietly slipped Adrian's camel-colored coat around his shoulders again before leaning against him with her engagement ring sparkling beneath the city lights. And this time, when Adrian looked at her, there was no jealousy left at all. Only certainty.